Hello, I'm Lauren Walton. Today I'm going to be talking about illustration 1, illustration 2, and then identifying bones and muscles on my 2-foot skeleton for our week 8 assignment number 3. I'm just going to show you my work center to show you that I have absolutely no information on here other than my illustrations and then my skeleton. So for my illustrations, I have them both over here. You may not be able to see them at that distance, but I have no way to prop them up without the assistance of my board. My information is at the top. And then illustration number 2. Illustration 1 and 2. And then I have note cards. I was unable to print out the structures list, therefore I have translated all the information on the structures list to 3 separate note card stacks, which go along with illustration 1, illustration 2, and then the bones and muscles associated with the identifiable information for the skeleton. As you can see, there's no information that's on here other than the main points that I need to touch on. However, there's no information that could possibly assist me on this assignment. Bear along with me, my memory is a little skewed, but I will be okay. So to start, I just wanted to touch on this and let you know that there are 3 sections within illustration 1 for skin. So this being the epidermis, dermis, and then the hypodermis. So for the epidermis, I'm going to inform you over the structure and then the tissue. No information on the back. So for the epidermis, the structure is the epithelial or the epithelial layer along with the outermost layer in other terms. And then the tissue type, which is a keratinized, stratified squamous epithelium. So that takes care of this one. And now I'm going to go into the different subsections underneath or within the epidermis. So the first one being stratum corneum, which is this right here, this layer. So below the stratum corneum is the stratum lucidum, or lucidum, which is located right here. And then below the stratum lucidum is the stratum granulosum, which is our 3rd subsection. Below the stratum granulosum is the stratum spinosum, which is our 4th one. And then last but not least, the section underneath the stratum spinosum is the stratum basale, which is located right here, and that contains the sweat gland and the blood vessels. So now that we've taken care of the epidermis section, now we're going to roll into the dermis section. There are 2 layers that lie within the dermis, one being the papillary and the next one being the reticular. So for my note card on papillary layer, I'm just going to identify the structure and the tissue type, no information. So the structure for the papillary layer is a thin arrangement of collagen fibers or particles, and then the tissue type is going to be a loose connective tissue. Below the papillary layer is the reticular layer, which is this lighter pink layer right here. The structure and the tissue type will be given no information. So the structure for the reticular layer is a thicker arrangement of collagen particles and fibers, and then the tissue type is a more elastic, dense particle. So now that we've taken care of the dermis, we're going to roll into the hypodermis. I'm going to inform you of the structure and then the tissue type, no information. So the structure for the hypodermis, this is going to be a more insulated fat storing layer, and then the tissue type is a more dense layer. Moving on to the blood vessel, which is located right here. And then the sweat gland that I decided to choose was the eccrine sweat gland, which is located right here. The sebaceous sweat gland actually doesn't come out of the epidermis, therefore I thought this one was more interesting because it's more susceptible to dirt particles and anything that really touches your skin. So I'm going to discuss the secretion along with the function. No information. So the secretion for the eccrine sweat gland is going to be producing water to the skin surface, whether it be your palms, your feet. And then the function of this is allowing heat to be evaporated on the skin surface. Moving into the melanocytes, which are the darker dots right here. When talking in terms of skin, obviously dead skin will lie closer to the top because we're going from old to young. So that takes us to keratinocytes, which are the lighter pink right here because these eventually die off and then they're replaced by the melanocytes. And then last but not least is the basement membrane. So the basement membrane is located right here. So this darker red line. So that actually takes care of illustration number 1. So moving on to illustration number 2. As you can see, I have note cards right here that are just assisting me with pronouncing the words, and there's absolutely no identifiable information on these cards. So the first is the concentric lamellae, which are going to be these more circular osteons right here, here, there. Circumferential lamellae, which are these line osteons right here. So the central canal, when talking in terms of blood, so the central canal is going to be this thicker portion. The blood vessel is going to be the bluer lines. You can see it on here. Yeah, the blue lines. Because the blood isn't oxygenated yet, so it's going to be blue. And then the nerve, which are these small dots that I've listed right here in green. Moving on to an osteocyte. So I have a small arrow that's expanding it from the small dot that's located right here to this giant osteocyte, which just further identifies it for you. Moving on to the osteum, which is just this right here. And then the periosteum, located right here, which further explains the compact bone and not spongy bone. Canaliculi, yes. So talking in terms of this and then the lacuna, so they're quite similar in my opinion. However, the canaliculi is more spacious, and it's the canal, for a better word, or the portion in between the lacuna. And then over here is the lacuna. So that actually includes all of my information for illustration number 2. Disregard the background noise. My apartment complex is not very quiet. So I'm going to take my skeleton off. So starting with the vertebrae, I have no information on my cards. So first off, I'm going to identify the cervical vertebrae. So the cervical vertebrae is going to be C1 through C7, which is located at the base of the spine, or base of the head, I'm sorry, top of the spine. So it's all of these right here. Next is the thoracic vertebrae, which is T1 through T12, and that's starting where C7 ended, down to here, ending at T12, and that's located in the thorax. Next is the lumbar vertebrae. So the lumbar vertebrae, the region and location is the base of the spine, right here, and that's going to be L1 through L5. So the sacrum is right here, and that's going to be S1 through S5, and that's located in between the left and right iliac. And then the coccyx bone, which hurts really bad if you break. My sister broke hers. Right here, it's just very small, and they usually contain anywhere between 3 to 5 vertebrae, and it's located at the base of the spine. Next is the zygomatic process. So the zygomatic process, or zygomatic bone, I'm thinking of xiphoid process. Zygomatic bone, it's actually located right here. So it's these small loops that are just reach around here, close to the temporal bone, and then the temporal bone. Next is the nasal bone, which is just right here. It's just very small. Temporal bone, which is located right here, just above the zygomatic. And then sphenoid bone, which is it's a very small bone that's located just to the right of the zygomatic. I always want to say xiphoid process. The zygomatic bone and the temporal bone. Next is the parietal bone, which is located on the sides. So you have 2 parietal bones. Next is the occipital bone, which is located in the back of the head. Trying not to put my hand around the camera. So the back of the head right here, that's the occipital bone. So the mandible and maxilla. So this is going to be the mandible, which allows movement of the jaw and allows for chewing and talking. And then this is the maxilla. Next is the frontal bone, which is just this front portion of the skull. Next is the hyoid, which is, it's a very unique location where it's situated. So it's close to the top of the C1 vertebrae, and then you would honestly have to move the mandible to get to it because it's located just deep underneath here. And then the diaphragm, so that's located right here, and it's anything within this region that would allow for visibility of breathing, essentially. Next is the sternum, which is located right here. And then, of course, my favorite, the xiphoid process. And then I'm going to dig deep into the muscles now, even though there's only 5. So the sternal cleidomastoid muscle. This is a very unique one in my opinion. So there are 2 that are vertical right here, reaching from close to the clavicle in between the sternum, vertically reaching up to the neck. And then there's another one that comes down to a V shape. So 2 vertical and then 1 V-shaped one, and it allows for mobility of the head and neck. So the rectus abdominis muscle, it's pretty self-explanatory. Most people know it due to working out, but that's going to be located right here in the middle. And then external abdominal oblique muscle, that's going to be located on the side. So that's how you get rid of blood handles. And then last but not least is the trapezius muscle, which is more like a diamond-shaped muscle. So it's going to extend from the neck, the base of the skull, down to the scapulas, and then down in a diamond shape, close to the end of the thoracic cavity. So this concludes my briefing. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.